For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise for the purpose of a colloquy with myself and the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Aiken.
Does the gentleman move to strike the last word? Does the gentleman? The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
And
Thank
I
you, Mr.
yield
Chairman.
to Mr. Aiken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The goal of this colloquy is to clarify language associated with funds provided for the Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle, or EFV, in Research, Development, Test, and Evaluation, Navy section of the bill. It's my understanding that the accompanying table states that $145 million of the funds provided for the EFV termination liability may be released only for use in system development and demonstration activities upon certification by the Secretary. Mr. Chairman, is that the language in...
Gentleman is correct. The committee is not in order. Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my understanding that the accompanying table states that $145 million of the funds provided for the EFV termination liability may be released only for use in system development and demonstration activities upon certification by the Secretary. Mr. Chairman, is that the language included in the report accompanying this bill?
Mr. Chairman, the gentleman is correct. The language which is included in the explanatory tables provides $145 million for termination liability or for continued system development and demonstration if certified by the Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is that the Department of Defense may interpret this language as direction from Congress to terminate EFV in this year, regardless of any recommendations made by Congress during debate on the fiscal year 2012 budget. No matter how this issue is resolved by Congress in fiscal year 2012, orderly conclusion of the fiscal year 2011 SDD activities that are already under contract and well underway is essential for the nation to get a usable product for its $3 billion investment. My reading of this language is that it provides sufficient flexibility for the Department to continue through SDD, and we encourage the Department to do just that. Mr. Chairman, is it the intent of the committee to provide sufficient flexibility for the Department to continue SDD activities related to the EFV?
I want to say to the gentleman, Mr. Chairman, that it is the intent of the committee to provide that flexibility. In fact, it is my hope that the Department exercises this flexibility to finish SDD activities and get something usable for the $3 billion investment that we have already made. Here's a unique opportunity for a win-win situation. The Marines want to cancel the program, and they would normally pay a $145 million termination fee. Here's an opportunity, and we believe the contractor is agreeable to forego the payment of the $145 million to them, but use that money to continue the program so that we do at least get something for the $3 billion that we have already appropriated. And I might expand on the colloquy. One of the problems that we have in our defense budgeting is that we too often start a program, spend a lot of money on it, and then decide to terminate it, and we get little or nothing for what we already did. So I believe it is important for the Department to have this flexibility as they negotiate the remaining activities for the fiscal year. It is my hope that the Department be able to reach an agreement which would provide for an orderly conclusion of the fiscal year 2011 SDD activities, ensure the Marine Corps is able to harvest the advances in technology and beneficial equipment from the program, should the program not be continued.
Mr. Chairman, I would appreciate a commitment from you to work together on the issue, the Appropriations Committee and the Armed Services Committee, as we consider the fiscal 2012 defense budget. The Congress must ensure that Marines have the equipment they need to successfully accomplish the missions they're asked to perform, and that includes amphibious assault. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your willingness to work on this, and I think that what we're doing is we got $3 billion already invested, and as you say, it doesn't make sense to waste that investment, especially when you're talking about a very small amount of money to finish up, and it leaves us the flexibility to take a really good look at how do we accomplish that critical mission of moving Marines from the ocean to the shore. So I appreciate your working on this colloquy and agreeing to where we're going.
Well, the gentleman knows that he and I are on the same page on this issue, that we want to get something for the money we've already spent, and we think this is a good way out.
Mr. Chairman,
I would be happy to yield to the former chairman.
I strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to ask the chairman a question. As I understand it, if we can add $34 million to this funding, we can get all the testing completed and not have to pay termination costs under the contract. So it seems to me you could make a case that this is the most cost-effective thing to do. That's at least what I understood. Is that the gentleman's understanding, or should we get the Marine Corps up here to try to explain this, or somebody?
Yes, if the gentleman would yield. My understanding is the $34 million would be to complete the research and the development of the program, and to develop the new innovations through this particular vehicle.
So that seems to be, I think that's a wise course. So I look forward to working with the gentleman on this.
Okay. Here we yield back. Do I have to strike the last word? No, Mr. Wright. Oh, he.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to engage in a colloquy with my colleague from Florida, Chairman of the House Defense Appropriations Committee. I stand today to support wounded warrior rehabilitation programs that support our brave military men and women who have sacrificed parts of their body for our freedom. Men and women who have sacrificed so much that today we can stand here on this floor and offer our remarks. These programs provide life-saving, life-changing rehabilitation services to thousands of injured servicemen and women. We must keep our promises to our troops and veterans consistent with the Pledge to America, which allows exceptions related to government funding so that we can honor our commitment to those who have served. We all know in this chamber that we can never repay what our military men and women have sacrificed for us and for our freedom. Witnessed today by Mr. Johnson's presence at the chair and a recognition of the troops who have served. These programs are a small way to support those who have sacrificed so much to keep us safe and free. And Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Dix, as you begin the difficult task of reviewing the fiscal year 2012 budget, I ask that you consider the needs and the well-being of our injured servicemen and women. I hope that we can work together to ensure that these types of rehabilitation programs for wounded warriors are given fair consideration during that process. And, Mr. Speaker, I now yield to Mr. Langevin.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to highlight the success of the Wounded Warrior Rehabilitation Program, specifically those which use community-based partnerships to provide injured U.S. military personnel with the opportunity to engage in sports activities as part of their rehabilitation at DoD medical centers and their home communities, These programs illustrate the power of sports activities to help wounded warriors return to a healthy and active lifestyle. Today, thousands of injured service members from Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts have benefited from these programs, and some even participated in the Department's first Wounded Warrior Games competition held last May. Now, Wounded Warrior rehabilitation programs are located at major DoD medical treatment facilities, military installations, veterans facilities, and in the communities around the country where our injured service members live. Wounded warriors, as we all know, ladies and gentlemen, are heroes for serving our country and important role models to so many people in our communities. We greatly appreciate their service, their sacrifices, and their leadership. With that, I'd like to yield to the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Dix.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this issue. Wounded warrior rehabilitation programs that have worked with national and community organizations have provided substantial support for injured members of our armed forces to participate in physical activity as an important aspect of their rehabilitation. Research shows that daily physical activity enhances wounded warriors' confidence, achievements, and quality of life. These programs are essential, and I would like to work with my colleague in the upcoming year to ensure that those programs will continue. And I yield to Mr. Young.
The gentleman from Washington controls the time.
I would yield to Mr. Young.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I want to congratulate and thank the gentleman from Washington for bringing this matter before the House today. It is something that Mr. Dix and I have worked with ever since these wars began. It's something that we cannot overlook, something that is extremely, extremely serious, a major debt that we owe to the men and women who serve our country as warfighters. And so I would say again to the gentleman, from Mr. Reichert from Washington, thank you very much for bringing this matter before the House today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the ranking member. I look forward to working with Mr. Langevin and both of you in making sure that our veterans, our wounded veterans returning home, are rehabilitated, are counseled, and receive the medical care and encouragement they need to continue a fruitful life.
Well, the gentleman from Washington yield to me.
Yes.
I really think we have got to solve this problem. This is very unfair that this one program, this is a national program in every sense of the word, and we have got to either get it authorized or do whatever we have to do to make this possible. And I look forward to working with you to achieve that.
I thank the gentleman from Washington, and I look forward to working with you, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm and passion. And I know all of us in this body would support this issue once we can get it solved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Missouri.
I move to strike the last word to enter into a colloquy with Mr. Brown of Georgia.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to enter into a colloquy with my friend and distinguished chairwoman of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Financial Services and General Government. I would like to thank you, Madam Chairman, as well as Chairman Rogers and your respective staffs for all your hard work, and I appreciate your willingness to work with me on this and my staff on this issue. I planned on offering my amendment number 264 that would have prevented any funding in this act to be used for vacant federal properties. However, as drafted, this language would have had serious unintended consequences. We see those sorts of things happen around here a lot, don't we? I would like to take this opportunity to clarify the intent behind my amendment and how it highlights an increasingly larger problem. According to a Senate report on questionable spending, roughly $25 billion is spent annually to maintain vacant or unused federal properties. My goal is to close off that spigot of federal waste. Unfortunately, my amendment as drafted would have inadvertently prevented basic security or the ability to respond to an emergency situation, such as a broken pipe or others. That being said, even with the current funds, we have numerous vacant federal buildings crumbling all across our nation. The Veterans Administration alone spends $170 million a year, often on buildings that they would rather sell, with Congress not standing in the way. In fact, a good example is those at the Charlie Norwood VA Center in Augusta, Georgia, that I represent. If we intend to tackle our difficult problems, we cannot continue to punt on the simple ones. It is outrageous that hundreds of billions of dollars have been wasted on unused buildings, sitting for over a decade waiting for renovation funding. We need to sell what isn't absolutely necessary and in the meantime start stop burning dollars on the maintenance of buildings going to waste. The problem with these buildings is symbolic of the federal government as a whole. So large and bloated that some are lost in limbo, decaying and sapping valuable resources. We have redundant agencies and regulations lost in the bloat, just like these buildings. Again, if we hope to make headway on the critical budget issues that we face as a nation, we must begin with these smaller common-sense changes. I hope that my colleagues will allow me to work on this issue with them during the process in the upcoming 2012 appropriation cycle. And I just request from the Chairman, I hope that you will work with me. We've got many vacant, unused federal properties all over this country that we need to stop funding. We need to sell these and reduce the debt by the funds that we do. So I'd like to ask the Chairman of the subcommittee if she'll be eager to work with me on this issue that's very
The gentleman
vital.
raises an absolutely critical issue that there are examples of all over the country, and we are more than willing to work with you on a continuing basis. You may be happy to note that we have cut $1.7 billion from the Public Buildings Fund in this continuing resolution. But we've got a lot more work to do, and as we prepare the FY 2012 spending bill, I think that we'll find more examples, and it's very critical to save every penny we can. And I just want to thank you so much for your dedication to finding all the waste that we have in the federal budget.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate your willingness to work with me, and now I yield back.
Yield back.
The lady from California, what purpose does she seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I offer Amendment 189, printed in the Congressional Record, to eliminate the...
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 189, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Ms. Woolsey of California.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 5 minutes. The gentleman from Kentucky.
I reserve a point of order on the gentlelady.
Point of order is reserved. Gentlelady from California.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment would eliminate the V-22 Osprey aircraft and the Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle. For years, the Pentagon has been throwing billions at weapons systems that don't work and don't keep us safe. Weapons systems that are obsolete in the post-Cold War era. Weapons systems that are not giving us bang for our buck. The V-22 Osprey is essentially a lemon. It makes defense contractors rich, but doesn't make our military strong. It has a notoriously bad safety record, having killed 30 of our own people in training exercises, and a deadly V-22 crash in Afghanistan last year was claimed as a victory by the Taliban. Billions over budget for a weapons system that's killing our own people. Not a good deal for the taxpayer, to say the least. The GAO has noted that this plane has trouble flying over 8,000 feet or in extreme heat. It also has problems carrying troops, transporting cargo, and operating in high-threat environments. A combat plane that can't operate in high-threat environments? Is there anything the Osprey can do? Actually, can it deliver mail? The President's Deficit Commission recently recommended we stop writing blank checks for the Osprey. So did another top official who more than 20 years ago said, and I quote him, "Given the risk we face from a military standpoint, the V-22 is at the bottom of the list, and for that reason, I decided to terminate it," unquote. That's not a prominent Democrat speaking, Mr. Chairman. That's a former Secretary of Defense named Dick Cheney. The Marine Corps Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle would provide almost as much savings, between $8 and $9 billion over the next decade. The President's proposed budget pulls the plug on this system, which is more than 14 years behind schedule and has also experienced major cost overruns. According to the task force on a unified security budget, the EFV breaks down on average every 8 hours and has trouble steering in water. Shouldn't we be worried about an amphibious vehicle that doesn't steer well in water? Would you spend billions of dollars on a family car that breaks down every 8 hours and doesn't steer well? And besides, even if the EFV ran like a dream, when was the last time we needed to launch an attack by sea? Once again, we're developing weapons for enemies that no longer exist. With spending cut fever having hit Capitol Hill, you would think these wasteful systems would be among the very first on the chopping block. But naturally, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would rather scale back the very things keeping people safe and strong. Police on the streets, investments in innovation and infrastructure, NIH research, education assistance, from Head Start to Pell Grant, and much, much more. I say we go in a different direction. If we're serious about restoring fiscal discipline, both the F-22 Osprey and the EFV must go. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does the gentleman from Kentucky still continue to reserve his point of order?
I withdraw the reservation on the point of order.
The reservation is withdrawn. Who seeks recognition? The gentleman from Washington.
I move to strike the records a number of words and just to make this statement.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
We have already had a straight up or down vote on the Osprey and resoundingly supported it here in the committee. On the expeditionary fighting vehicle, there's a decision been made by the Secretary of the Navy to end this program. What we're trying to do is to do it in a way that finishes the research with additional $34 million and avoids termination liability. So I urge a no on this amendment, and I'll yield to my friend from Florida, if you have, the chairman, if you have any comment on this.
Thank the gentleman for yielding, Mr. Chairman. And I rise in opposition to the amendment. We just had a very good colloquy on the issue of the EFV, and we think we have a solution here that is good for the taxpayer, is good for the Marine Corps, is good for the Marines. Here's an opportunity to get something for the $3 billion that we've already spent on this program. So I must be opposed to that. And on the V-22, we've already voted on that once during the earlier procedures on this bill. The V-22 did have some developmental problems years ago. The V-22 is a most effective weapon being used in Afghanistan. Because of the high mountains, because of the high altitudes, because of the weather, the V-22 is the vehicle of choice to move our warfighters from where they are to where they have to be. So I would hope that the vote would be the same on this amendment as it was earlier on the V-22, and that's to defeat it. Here is an airplane. The Marines use this V-22 in Afghanistan on a regular basis because it has the capability that the CH-46 does not have. It has the ability for altitude. It has the ability for speed, and it is an outstanding aircraft today. And I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Can we have a vote on the amendment?
Question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California. Those in favor signify so by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not...
Mr. Chairman?
Gentlelady.
With that, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
I'd like to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
I would like to turn to my colleague, Chairman Mica of the Transportation Committee, with the amendment that he has.
Well, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Aderholt, first of all, I want to thank you for recognizing me and also giving me this opportunity to speak on my amendment, which in consultation with you, Mr. Chairman, I will withdraw and not offer. That is amendment, I believe it's numbered 543 as printed. Mr. Aderholt, first I want to thank you for your pledge to continue to work with your
subcommittee and our full committee in your rigorous oversight of how the Transportation Security Administration is spending our scarce resources. Unfortunately, the TSA bureaucracy has mushroomed since 9/11 from a workforce of 16,500 to 62,000 employees today. TSA has, and the purpose of my amendment is my concern about the growth in administrative overhead, huge numbers of personnel. TSA has more employees than the Department of State, the Department of Education and Labor and Housing and Urban Development combined. TSA headquarters, now listen to this, TSA headquarters within a few miles of where we're standing has 3,776, latest count, administrative bureaucrats employed. 27% are supervisors of them. The average pay of these 3,700 plus bureaucrats here is $105,000 on average. Having helped create TSA in the aftermath of 9/11, I can tell you we never intended to support this kind of bureaucracy. Now listen to this. If you think the bureaucracy in Washington is bad, there are 9,233 non-screener employees at the airports across the country. There are only 400 airports in the program. That's 20 bureaucrats per airport on average. This agency is totally out of control. And in addition, in the 2012 budget, they've asked for 3,300 more positions. In its nearly 10 years since creation, Mr. Chairman, TSA still lacks the institutional capacity to become a performance-driven organization. On January 28th, TSA shut down the most successful screening program we have. We set up two models, both with federal supervision, one using private contractors. Every positive initiative we've ever gotten from TSA came from those programs, and they shut it down. In addition, 1 week later, they granted collective bargaining rights to TSA workers. It's time that we dramatically reform TSA, cut its massive administrative bureaucracy, and I'll work with you. My cuts were not as surgical as maybe they need to be, but we will work with you to improve its mission. My goal is less bureaucracy and redirect TSA to its important security mission. Finally, the failure of TSA puts this nation at risk. Read the GAA reports with total failure of the SPOT program, the Behavior Recognition Program. Get the classified briefings on the failure of the advanced technology. They went out and bought $500 million worth of equipment, spent another $500 million to install it, and the failure is dramatic, and you can read that as members of Congress. The failure of the pat-down program. Everyone's getting pat-down. You think that's helpful? I implore members to get a classified briefing and see again the results of that failure. The failure of to have even a pilot identification. 6 years ago, I asked for a pilot identification that's durable, not something that looked like it came out of a Cracker Jack box, with the pilot's photograph on it and a biometric measure. After spending millions of dollars, TSA gave us a card. The only pilots on it are Wilbur and Orville Wright. The biometric measure that they put is a total failure. Any credit card you have in your wallet it has better capability than what they produce. It's failure after failure, and they put us at risk, and I thank you for offering to work with me to make necessary changes.
Gentleman from Alabama's time has expired. Gentleman from Kentucky.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I yield to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me say, Chairman Mica, that I completely understand your interest in this pushing TSA to meet its mission in a more cost-effective manner. Because of these concerns, we have placed a number of provisions within the CR that constrain TSA spending to include a firm cap on the number of airport screeners TSA may hire in FY11. Additionally, we included a strong oversight provision requiring them to report on their efforts to incorporate more advanced integrated technology into the checkpoints. And let me add that our subcommittee fully intends to review all of TSA's security and management practices as we prepare for the FY12 Homeland Bill. I plan to carry forward and expand the oversight that we began with the CR within the FY12 bill, and I'd like to work closely with you and your committee in an effort as we move forward to try to address these concerns that you shared with us this morning. Let me just say that we certainly in this country want to strike a balance between security in this nation and certainly make sure that we have appropriate oversight. I appreciate you calling attention to these issues that you mentioned this morning, and I can assure you our committee will work with you in trying to work toward making doing a better job in oversight for TSA and making sure we do have the security we need for this country. I yield back.
If the gentleman would stand by a moment. When we first stood up TSA, I chaired that subcommittee. We put a limit on the number of employees that TSA could have. They first wanted, I think it was 30,000 people. We said, no, that's... Then they went up to 35. Then they went to 40. Then they went to 43. And I said, time out. And so we put a limit on the number of TSA employees that were allowed at 44,000. That cap stayed in place until 2006, when the other party gained control of this body. The cap came off. And, Mr. Mica, I don't know the number total. I think it's in the 60s.
62, if the gentleman yield. 62,000, of which we have 3,770 administrative personnel in Washington, D.C., and another 9,000, over 9,000 administrative personnel in non-screening positions across the country.
We heard your statement. We're up to 62,000 now, and it's way too much. And let me ask the chairman. How many, is there a cap now reinstated in this bill for TSA employees? Now you.
We have a cap of 46,000 in this bill.
They can't go above 46,000?
That is correct.
And there are 62. So, there'll be some reductions. Am I correct?
We're looking at absolutely doing that. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I want to congratulate Mr. Mica, Chairman Mica, and Chairman Aderholt, who are working together to rein in this organization that's almost gone beyond belief, so that we can get some discipline and some savings in this organization. I don't know about you, but the airports I go through, there are way too many TSA employees just standing around, making conversation with each other. And that's okay, but we're overstaffed at TSA. This bill gets us back to within some degree of reason.
Mr. Chairman, would you yield?
I yield.
Let me just clarify. The 46,000 is the number of screeners that is capped right now. But let me assure you that we will continue to monitor that to make sure that your concerns, that when you were chairman of this subcommittee, and of course the chairman of the Transportation Committee's concerns, are addressed. And I appreciate both of your input this morning, and we look forward to working with both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yield back.
Gentleman from Indiana. For what purpose do you seek recognition?
Move to strike last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Real quickly, I support everything that my colleagues just said, but I want to deviate just a little bit and talk about something real quickly that needs to be discussed. We have sent 2 or 3 letters to the President, Congressman Poe, Congressman Royce, and I, and others, regarding our southern border. We just had 2 DEA agents attacked. One was killed. 70, 80 miles into Arizona, there are signs telling American people, don't go south of this because of the danger. This is in America. We have drug dealers sitting in spy sites in the United States monitoring the border from the U.S. side to make sure that they can bring their drugs across and bring people across in their vans and in other ways. It is a real problem. Now, we sent 17,000 people down to the Gulf when the oil spill took place. We haven't sent over 1,400 National Guard people down, and not even near the border in many cases, and we've got a terrible problem. Farmers and people are scared to death to go along the 1,980-mile border between us and Mexico, and the President has ignored letter after letter after letter that would deal with this problem. And I would just say to the administration, if they were listening, let's get on with protecting that southern border. It's a war zone, and people are afraid, scared to death down there, and they're being killed. And bullets are coming across the border. So I'd just like to say, I will, just one second. I'd just like to say that I would like to take this opportunity to encourage the administration to really get on with protecting our southern border, and I'll be happy to yield.
I agree with the gentleman. I've been down there on that southern border. I would just point out, though, that yesterday we killed the National Drug Intelligence Center, which is used by the Justice Department to try and target the people coming across. I mean, this was a Justice Department program, but now, your side killed it.
If I may reclaim my time, sending National Guard troops down there en masse to protect that border until it's completely secure, along with the Border Patrol agents, will do the job. The cut yesterday would not affect this kind of an approach to solving the problem. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does the gentleman move to strike the last word?
Yes, I move to strike the
gentleman recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to engage the chairman of the subcommittee, Mr. Latham, in a colloquy. As the gentleman knows, I believe the implementation of the next generation of air traffic control is a very necessary and critical step in bringing our aviation system into the 21st century. The nation's aviation transportation network is currently based on an outdated, outmoded, decades-old land-based radar system. Our cell phones have better capability than our air traffic control system. The next generation of air traffic control reflects an approach to move forward while making our aviation system much safer, much more efficient, and much more cost-effective by moving it to a satellite-based system that will benefit all Americans. Once fully implemented, the next generation system will reduce flight delays, saving Americans billions of dollars in lost productivity. Aircraft will be able to operate more efficiently, resulting in less fuel consumption. Congestion at some of our nation's busiest airports will be significantly reduced, freeing up much-needed airspace to accommodate growth in the aviation sector. And I'm particularly proud that most of the work that is being done to validate the FAA's next generation of air traffic control is being done at the Federal Aviation Administration Technical Center in my district in New Jersey that will help develop this and implement it. That is why I rise today, and while I strongly support the House's effort to reduce wasteful government spending, I am also very concerned about programs that could be effective unintendedly. And this measure includes a slight reduction in the FAA's Facilities and Equipment account, an account which could provide some of the funding for the work associated with NextGen. Can the gentleman assure me that this reduction will not negatively impact the critical work that is taking place on the next generation of air traffic control?
If the gentleman will yield. I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I, too, share his commitment to NextGen and believe that this program is essential to achieving the much-needed improvements in our aviation system. The committee has consulted with the FAA. We believe that these modest savings will be beneficial to the taxpayers while providing the FAA with the funds necessary to continue to do the important work in bringing NextGen to fruition. I yield back to the gentleman.
I thank you, Mr. Latham, for sharing that information and for your commitment to the next generation of air traffic control, and look forward to continuing to work with you and the committee and this body to see that accomplished. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New Jersey yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
To strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I had an amendment to create, which has now been rolled out of order, to create an Afghanistan-Pakistan study group. The war in Afghanistan has been going on for 10 years. The first person killed in Afghanistan was from my congressional district, Michael Spahn. I was the author of the Iraq study group, where we got Baker and Hamilton in a bipartisan way to come together to look at the war. I have asked the administration to do something. And quite frankly, when I read Woodward's book, Obama's War, it was depressing because it almost looks like they're approaching this on basically political ways, political means. The war has now been going on for 10 years. 10 years! And quite frankly, I think not only has the administration failed, the Congress has failed. So what I hope to do is to, at an appropriate time, offer an amendment to create an Afghanistan-Pakistan study group modeled after the Iraq study group and put on people like Sam Nunn, former chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Duncan Hunter, Ryan Crocker, who was our former ambassador to Iraq, who supports this concept, General Jack Keane, who was the author of The Surge, General Charles Krulak, who was head of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Zinni, who was Commandant of the Marine Corps, Ike Skelton, former chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, to see, are we fighting this war the right way? Are we doing the right thing? And I believe we need fresh eyes on the target. And when you look at and read Obama's War by Woodward, you can see there are no fresh eyes on the target. And we owe it to the men and women that are fighting in Afghanistan and dealing with this issue to make sure that we are doing everything possible, and I don't know what the answer is, everything possible to make sure that we're doing what we should do as a nation. And with that, I hope when there's an opportunity I can offer this amendment, because I don't think the administration is going to do this by executive order, that we can adopt this because we owe it to our fighting men. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition?
From Missouri, but I rise to enter in a colloquy with the gentleman from Florida. I stand today to support...
Does the gentlelady from Missouri seek to strike the last word?
Yes.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I rise to enter in a colloquy with the gentleman from Florida. I stand today to support our brave military men and women and their families who sacrifice in the service of freedom. Mr. Chairman, can you assure me that this bill will not in any way harm or put to risk our troops?
The gentlelady yield.
Yes.
I thank the gentlelady for raising the question. It is something that we should discuss more and more, the fact that we have an obligation to our troops and our war fighters and our veterans. And I would say that Mr. Dixon and I worked long and hard to come up with the savings that we were instructed to come up with without, and I can guarantee the gentlelady, we did not create anything that would have an adverse effect on our war fighters, would not have an adverse effect on our nation's readiness, would not have an adverse effect on their training and their preparation for war. So I say to the gentlelady, I share her very strong commitment, and I thank her for her strong commitment, and our subcommittee has the same strong commitment, so I can assure her.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, in our Constitution, one of the few things that we're supposed to do here is to provide for the common defense. And I know I'm committed to doing that, and I know you're committed to doing that. And yet we have this continuing resolution, and so that certainly makes me feel more confident in our efforts, that our troops are being watched out for and their families. So I thank you for that commitment, and will you continue to promise to work with me through this coming year as we move forward to ensure that our troops and their families are supplied with all that they need?
I can and I would like to say that we look forward to working with you during this Congress as we do what it is that you want us to do.
Thank you very much for your commitment. I look forward to it. With that, I yield back.
Missouri yields back her time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
To strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In an effort to help my constituents understand, the country understand, and even all of us understand the scale of the problem we face, it's important, I think, to, in terms of our own budget, that if we in our own lives take our income, you've got to calculate your income and your expenses, and the things you've got to pay first is the mortgage. You've got to pay the light bill. You've got to make sure above all, the expenses of your home are paid first, and in the same way, the federal government must pay the expenses of the mandatory programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the interest on the national debt, our obligation to our veterans. Those programs must be paid first. And we bring in about $2.2 trillion in revenue every year from all sources. When you take into account what we must pay, the federal government must pay to our veterans, to the mandatory spending programs, those programs cost about $2.3 trillion. Therefore, the way to think about the scale of the problem we face is to analyze it in terms of when do we as a nation run out of cash and have to start borrowing? When is National Credit Card Day? And in analyzing that, I discovered that we actually don't have a National Credit Card Day. At the stroke of midnight, on the first day of the fiscal year, the United States government has already borrowed $105 million. Now, Tax Freedom Day occurs in May, far too late in the year when we begin to work for ourselves and no longer are working to pay taxes. But as a nation, we begin to borrow money. We've already borrowed $105 million at the stroke of midnight that must be paid off by our kids. And the scale of the problem, therefore, is far larger than the appropriations bill we face here today. And we, in this new majority, were elected by the nation to begin to deal with the terrible burden of the debt, the terrible burden of these unfunded liabilities that our children and our grandchildren are going to pay. For the first time in history, we have our predecessors in this Congress, our predecessors in the White House, and this President have loaded our children up with an unparalleled, unprecedented level of debt that we today, in this debate on this appropriations bill, are beginning to deal with. The $100 billion cuts that we're making here today will allow us to stop borrowing for about 5 days. We'll get out to, say, Friday before we have to start borrowing money. The scale of the problem is so huge that if we think of it in terms of when, as a nation, we have to start borrowing money, when is National Credit Card moment, then we, I think, can help explain to the public the urgency of getting spending under control, of cutting back everywhere we can, focusing the nation on its core functions under the Constitution. We in this new majority are committed to restoring the constitutional limits on our federal government, restoring the 10th Amendment, restoring individual liberty wherever we can, and in so doing, as Thomas Jefferson liked to say, if you apply the Constitution, the knot will untie itself. No matter what the problem is, Mr. Jefferson liked to point out that if we simply apply the Constitution, the knot will untie itself. What lies ahead of us if we do not deal with this problem, not only of the spending year to year, but we've got to really dramatically deal with the fraud, the waste, and the abuse in our social welfare programs, to begin to deal with them realistically, both parties, Republicans and Democrats, in controlling the explosive growth of the entitlement programs. And looking at the history of the Roman Empire, Mr. Speaker, we see that at the end of the Roman Empire, one writer of the period went so far to suggest that those who lived off the treasury in the Roman Empire were more numerous than those paying into it. At the end of the empire, it was under Diocletian and Constantine, when it really began to decline, the Roman Empire taxed its citizens more heavily, conscripted their labor, regulated their lives and their occupations in every detail. The Roman Empire became a coercive, omnipresent, all-powerful organization that subdued individual interests and levied all resources towards one overarching goal, the survival of the state. We as a nation have got to deal with the scale of the spending, the debt, these unfunded liabilities that are being passed on to our kids, or if we're not careful, the United States will follow the Roman Empire in devaluing our currency, in the level of debt, something that at a scale that can't be repaid. And you saw it towards the end of the Roman Empire, where taxation became so heavy that it consumed all the resources of the state. And in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I'd point out that at the end of the Roman Empire, people were so, one writer of the period pointed out that it was actually very common for Romans who were taxed so heavily, who were crushed and so overwhelmed with bureaucracy, that they actually welcomed the invaders who were taking over the Roman Empire. It's a decisive moment in American history, Mr. Speaker. We in the new majority, this constitutional conservative majority, are bringing these amendments. I thank Mr. Rogers for bringing this bill to the floor, the largest cuts we've ever seen in annual spending, and we as a nation are at a turning point, and I'm convinced that we finally are beginning to deal with this problem when we get spending under control. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word and offer an amendment number 208.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 208, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Cole of Oklahoma.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is a simple amendment, and it's on an issue we voted on as recently as 3 weeks ago. Very simply put, my amendment prohibits the use of funds under this Act to administer or carry out any of the activities for the Presidential Election Campaign Fund or to transfer public dollars to political conventions under Chapter 96 of the Internal Revenue Code. Just 3 weeks ago, this House passed H.R. 359, which eliminated taxpayer financing for presidential election campaigns and political party conventions. This bill passed by a vote of 239 to 160 under a modified open rule. If signed into law, it will save $617 million over 10 years. Mr. Chairman, today's amendment is a down payment on that goal. CBO scored this amendment as saving $38 million in budgetary authority and $40 million in outlays for fiscal year 2011. We all know on this floor we need to cut spending. Mr. Chairman, we can start today by canceling political welfare for politicians and political party conventions. This is an easy amendment that I urge all members to support, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York
Strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment. It's interesting that the gentleman calls it political welfare for elected officials. We should remember why this was created and when it was created. This was created after Watergate, and it was created as an understanding that we needed to move more and more to a situation where folks with a lot of money would not go around controlling our elections. The gentleman calls it political welfare for presidential candidates, but in fact, without this, it is totally in the hands of people making donations, whereas here, it is the average American citizen who gets a chance to donate to this campaign. And so we know that a lot of the amendments that will come up today are directed not necessarily at issues, but I believe, and many of us believe, are directed at who is the resident of the White House right now. And we have an election coming up in 2012, and I think some would rather have an open-ended private contribution situation where a lot of very wealthy people in this country control the giving to elections. So I really think that this is an amendment that sounds like a savings. But it isn't. It is part of many amendments we will see today that strike at this particular president and at the White House and at the expenses that have to do with the President of the United States. So I would hope that folks understand, first of all, why this was created, why it's been important, why presidential candidates accept this kind of funding, but most importantly, why it allows the American taxpayer the ability to decide if he or she wants to participate in having something to do with how the election gets funded. No one is forced to do this. This is just an opportunity for the average American to participate. So I really hope that in a bipartisan fashion, people turn this down and reject this amendment. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Missouri rise?
Move to strike the last word, Ms. Chair.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in support of the Cole Amendment because I think political candidates should rely on private donations rather than tax dollars for their political campaigns. And I might mention to my very dear friend, Mr. Serrano, that I think that the President of the United States today showed the best example of people all around the country of every financial means to contribute to his campaign. Friends of my children did $5 a month or offered $10. I mean, that was the most incredible show of involvement that I've seen in my life. And so to say that it would be against this president, I think, is just not fair. I also think that this amendment adds on the good work done by Mr. Cole and our leader's office with the UCUT bill, H.R. 359. And according to the CBO, this amendment will actually save $38 million, and $38 million is $38 million, and quite frankly, we're looking to save as many tax dollars as possible. So, Mr. Chair, I would strongly support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Oklahoma. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Speaker,
the amendment is agreed.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to record a vote on that. Mr. Chairman.
Does the gentleman ask for a recorded vote?
Yes, I do.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Oklahoma will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment of the desk. The gentleman
specify the number of the amendment.
Number 514, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 514, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Price of North Carolina.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, as members are aware, H.R. 1 provided no funding in 2011 for firefighter hiring grants, also known as SAFER grants, a reduction of $420 million. Fortunately, yesterday the House resoundingly overturned that ill-advised move and adopted an amendment by Mr. Pascrell to restore the funding. But my colleagues should be aware that funding is only part of the problem with this bill when it comes to the SAFER program. The underlying bill also neglects to maintain provisions enacted in fiscal years 2009 and 2010 that allowed fire departments to use these grants to rehire laid-off firefighters and to prevent others from being laid off in the first place. The law traditionally permits SAFER grants to only be used to hire new staff. That provision makes sense when our economy is booming and local governments are in a position to hire new workers. But when the recovery is still fragile and local budgets are actually contracting and workers are being laid off, FEMA needs the flexibility to use these grants to keep firefighters from being cut off in the first place. After all, the purpose of the SAFER program is to help maintain a safe level of fire staffing across the country. According to the firefighter organizations, over 5,000 firefighter jobs have been lost since 2008, and another 5,200 are currently at risk. Right now, the safety of our communities is being jeopardized by potential and actual layoffs of public safety personnel, more so than because of a reluctance to hire new personnel. This amendment also continues provisions from 2009 and 2010 that waived certain budgetary requirements local fire departments have to fulfill in order to receive a grant. These include not allowing a fire department's overall budget to drop below a certain level, not reducing staff over a number of years even if budgets continue to suffer, and providing local matching funds. Again, these provisions are fine when local coffers are healthy, but we all know how strapped our cities and counties are right now, and these requirements, quite frankly, are impossible for many of them to meet. So, Mr. Chairman, if we don't pass this amendment and waive these provisions, the fire organizations tell me that very few departments will be able to apply for funds. The burden of these requirements is simply too much right now. The result will be more firefighter layoffs, fewer rehires, and a less prepared country. When colleagues are weighing this amendment, I encourage you to consider the intent of the SAFER program, ensuring we have a safe level of staffing of our nation's preeminent first responders, firefighters, and ensuring that our communities have workable options for keeping their firefighting staffs at full strength. We've already overwhelmingly supported funding for firefighter jobs by adding funding back to the SAFER program. If you really support these jobs, you should vote to allow these funds to be used in the best way possible to keep the firefighters on staff. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from